It's the weekend and you have financial questions that need answering. That can only mean one thing. It's time for Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
Welcome. It is the Jill on Money show. We are so happy you're joining us. Thanks for tuning in. It's great. This is the program that tries to take the mystery out of your financial life. And it has been a year, Mark, right? It has been an insane year. In fact, this is pretty much the anniversary of when everybody started to realize just how bad the virus was going to be. It's when municipalities shut down. It's also when Mark and I decided to go to a daily podcast. That's our sister broadcast. So if you want to catch up on the last year and you want to hear everything we've done, all you need to do is go to our website, go to jillonmoney.com, and right there on the front door, there's a little picture of the podcast, and Mark has some great stuff there. And you click on it, and you can subscribe to it, and you won't miss any new episodes, but you can go back and listen to old ones as well, right on our website, right there, jillonmoney.com. And we went to one a day as a podcast episode cadence because you guys were sending so many emails. So some of you have sent emails because you're listening to this radio show, but others may have read stuff and they send us emails. But as soon as the virus hit and everyone was home and the markets were going crazy, then the emails poured in. And so to respond to that, we couldn't just do emails here on this radio show. We couldn't just do once a week for the podcast emails. We just had to ramp it up. So we went to 7 days a week. That's what we did. And I'm really glad that we did also because it's been amazing. By the way, when you think about this, a whole year and all the crazy fallout that we've seen in the economy and in our financial lives, maybe the best lesson of this is that 1 year later, you know that you're on a ride as an investor, but you may not actually want to make a ton of moves in the middle of that ride. And isn't that a great lesson to learn? It is probably one of the lessons that our sponsor, Facet Wealth, has got for you, meaning that if you're just knee-jerk, transaction-based trader or even investor, you think you're an investor, you think you know the top or the bottom, you're wrong. You just don't. Nobody does. And that's why you should check out Facet Wealth because they provide financial planning to everyone. Well, not every single person, but the vast majority of people. They've got a flat fee structure, which means no conflicts. Kind of great. They also provide you with a certified financial planner. And why is that important? Well, in this age where you don't really know who's putting you first, I'll tell you what, a certified financial planner who's a fiduciary who acts in your best interest at all times, that is key. So goal-based financial planning, no wealth or account minimums. Facet's pretty amazing. They meet you where you are. Go check out facetwealth.com. That's where you can get more info. All right. Now, Mark's nudging me because I'm yammering on here. So let's get to a question. Terry is 70 years old. Terry writes that I retired with just over $1 million. Woo! In an IRA with Fidelity. Terry continues, my wife will turn 65 this summer. She's still working, but she does plan to retire in the next year or so. Her retirement plan is presently with TIAA, also worth a bit over $1 million. Whew, that's great. Terry says, I'm inclined for safety purposes to keep our money with 2 separate investment firms after she retires. And he says, this is funny in parentheses, thinking of Lehman Brothers here, but does that really make sense? Would it be smarter to keep my money separate from hers, but have both of our retirement funds with the same company, either with Fidelity or TIAA? Thank you for your thoughts, Terry. Terry, well, I don't think you're looking at a Lehman Brothers failure here. Okay. So when people think about having different institutions and you're wondering, well, what if one goes under and the other one doesn't? I don't think, first of all, Fidelity is certainly not going under and TIAA is not going over. So just in these particular cases, you're pretty safe. But more to the point, do you want to keep 2 separate accounts? That's a different question. I'm wondering if, because your wife has a TIAA CREF account, does she work at a nonprofit? Does she also have a pension portion of potential retirement income? And one of the things that has become very alluring about a company like TIAA CREF is that the annuity component, the TIAA side, that side is one of the few low cost fixed annuities that are out there that I feel really comfortable with. TIAA, it's an amazing company. The reason that I might keep these funds separate is maybe you're going to want to turn her retirement into some stream of income. Maybe you're going to want to have her money be the stream of income that supplements your Social Security. And then your Fidelity would be a surplus account that you could just use to get access to money when you need it. I think is pretty compelling is that you have very different options here. It's a little bit more of a pain in the neck to manage. I know that. But I think that this is one case where I'm usually the queen of consolidate everything, just make it easier on yourself. This may be a situation where we keep them separate and we would, maybe consider, as I said, annuitizing a portion of your wife's account that gives you a stream of income, but keeping yours as a supplemental extra retirement account. So, Terry, it's very funny. Don't keep it separate because you're scared of failure, but do potentially keep it separate because maybe you're thinking that it works better for you. So I hope that helps. I think that you're in really good shape in terms of keeping these two companies in your life. Okay. Hope that helps. All right. Here's one more question before we go to a break from Julie. Once an IRA CD matures, can the funds be transferred to any individual retirement account? Yes, absolutely. So Julie's got a traditional IRA. She's looking to transfer a part of it into a new IRA CD, opening it up for the next few years upon maturity, and might can transfer it back to a traditional. Okay, everyone calm down here about traditional IRA CD. If you have an IRA account, you can put anything inside of it, meaning a CD, a bond fund, a stock fund, an individual stock. There's actually a few things you're not allowed to put into it, but like collectibles. But so what I would suggest is you can certainly keep putting CDs inside of your IRA account. You can do it with any different institution, but just be careful to keep track of everything and see how that goes. But if it's a traditional IRA, it's a traditional IRA. Okay. So don't worry too much about that. And if you need help with getting more interest or look at different CD rates, do go to depositaccounts.com. Depositaccounts.com. It's an aggregation site, so go for it. All right, you're listening to Jill on Money. If you have a financial question, all you need to do is email us. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. That's our email address. Tell us what's on your mind, and Mark will get right back in touch with you. Well, maybe not right back, but be patient. There's a lot of people who have written in, and we want to get to all your questions. So, all right, we're there for you, but we're plowing through. Okay, Jill on Money. We'll be right back.
Follow Jill on Twitter and Instagram for more personal finance content. Just use the handle @JillOnMoney. Now, back to the show.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we are here trying to answer all of your financial questions. Now, of course, I know it's the middle of March. It is tax season, so I presume we're going to get a lot of questions about tax season. Mark, I don't know if you saw this in the stimulus plan. Guess what? Unemployment benefits not taxable up to $10,200. That's amazing. All right, let's go. Let's go take a caller. We'll be talking more about taxes throughout the next few weeks, so don't worry about that. We are talking right now to Chloe from Arizona. Hi, Chloe. What can we do for you?
So I wrote into you because I have sort of a unique challenge in saving for retirement with my husband. My husband is undocumented, and because of all of the many laws that are involved in getting citizenship, it might be some time before he is eligible for his own social security number and before he's eligible, therefore, for retirement accounts.
Okay, let me just say one thing. So a
Mhm.
lot of people listening might be surprised about this, that you can be married to a US citizen and still not automatically become a US citizen, right?
That is true. And it
Okay.
is especially true since the pandemic.
Okay. Got it. Now, so tell me about yourselves. How do you support yourselves? What's going on?
Yep. So I am a teacher. I'm in my 16th year teaching, and he is a heavy equipment mechanic. So he works on diesel engines. We both have maintained employment through the pandemic. So we're very grateful for that. We own a home that's valued at about $350,000, and we have a 3-month emergency fund. We're working to get that to about a 6-month emergency fund. Cars are paid off, no consumer debt. I have an $11,000 student loan. Right now, I have a unique opportunity I have a 457 employer match. And this is the first year that I'm maxing that out.
Great. What's the interest rate on the mortgage?
3.875.
You own a house, it's worth 350, you have $160,000 left on that
Correct.
mortgage. The student loan, is it a federal student loan or a private student loan?
Yeah, it's a federal student loan.
So that's essentially at 0% right this second, right?
Correct. Correct.
Have you made payments during the pandemic when it was at 0%?
I've continued to make payments. Yes.
Oh, that's good. You're on track to pay this off pretty quickly, right?
Yes, correct.
Good. Okay. Now, so you as a teacher, 16 years into the system, you have a pension.
Mhm.
You also have a 457 plan. Now, tell me a little bit about that.
So the 457 plan there's a $1,200 match from my employer. And because I realized that my husband won't be able to open up his own IRA for an undefined period of time, I am thinking of the 457 as retirement for us both.
Yeah.
And so I'm maxing that out. So by the end of this year, that account will have, depending on the market, somewhere around 35,000 in it.
How much do you earn as a teacher?
So I make 70,000. I work for a charter school that has a for performance structure.
Wow. And how much does he earn?
He earns about 50,000 a year, give or take, depending on the year.
And he pays taxes on that 50 or not?
Correct. He does. He has to use something called an ITIN to pay. But yes, he is able to pay taxes.
Okay. So on that 120 grand a year, tell me about how's the cash flow?
So the cash flow month to month, we're meeting all of our expenses, mortgage, utilities, all that stuff, and we are able to save somewhere between the picture has changed since I started making these big contributions to the 457. So I'd say now we have about $1,500 to $2,000 a month to save.
Wow, that's awesome. Okay, this is great. You're doing great. Okay.
Thanks.
You're really doing great. So breathe. You're doing great. You know, I'd like your emergency reserve fund to be a little bit closer to your 6-month target of emergency, right? So let's say that's good. Okay. Now, what else is invested? You've got the 457 plan, you've got the emergency reserve. Do you have any other accounts that are out there floating around?
So I worked in another state. I have another pension where I'm vested. About 30. I know it's kind of tricky. I'm not sure what to do with that money. So it's 13,000, and so I'm not sure whether I should roll that over into a traditional IRA or if I leave it there because it will be a pension when I reach retirement age.
Is there any chance you would move back to that state?
No chance.
No, wow. Okay. This wasn't so great. I mean, look, it's $13,000. I know what state it is, but I'm not going to out you because I want to be clear about that. That state has an amazing pension plan, but it's only 13 grand. You know what I'm saying? So if you just want ease of management, you could certainly roll it over into an IRA rollover wherever, like Fidelity, Vanguard, whatever, you know what I mean? So doesn't really matter. I would only say to really keep it if there were more money in it. And also if you thought you might go back there. But if you're not, it's okay to roll it over. I think that your game plan is terrific because essentially what you've done is you've said, I'm going to push as much money into retirement as we possibly can. You reduce your own taxable income, or even if you use a Roth, it's okay. You're putting that money aside, and then your husband's income can basically help float your general expenses. Okay. And so I think this is a good game plan. I do. Look, the federal student loan, you're probably on pace to pay it off by the end of this year-ish. Is that about right?
Yeah, I think that sounds right.
Okay. So, if you had a little extra money, I would like it that you not pay any interest on that. So in the near term, if you have that $1,500 or $2,000, I think that what you might want to do is to take some of that 1,500, 2,000 and put it into the emergency reserve fund, and also make a little extra money on the student loans, because that interest is going to be real when it comes back into your life. I kind of want that to be paid off by the end of this year. So I think that those are the ways that I would use the 1,500 or 2,000 right now. I also want you to know that as you're doing this, don't be in a rush to pay off your mortgage. Don't. It's really, it's not worth it. And the other aspects of your financial life are going to come into clearer focus, obviously, as time moves on. And if he is able to gain citizenship, and you can do that, then we can start talking about, like, what are his options for creating a retirement fund, and you can do more of that. So I think it sounds good to me. It sounds like you're doing exactly what you should be doing.
Okay. So walking away from the pension because it is a fairly nominal amount is okay.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to walk away from it. You're going to roll it over. It's a direct rollover into an IRA rollover account.
Okay.
Mark said you wanted to have kids. Is that right?
Yeah. So we're hoping soon to have one or two children, and I know that will change the picture significantly.
Yes. And you may not have that 1,500 or 2,000 extra. So if that's the case, just to remind you again, if you don't have that surplus money, it's even more important for you to have the student loan debt paid down by the time you have kids or by the end of this year, to have the 6-month emergency reserve fund, even put some extra money in there just because it's expensive to have kids. And do not put any money into a education fund until we get more of your retirement savings rolling. Okay.
That sounds like a great plan to me. I got no help with college, and I still managed to do it. So I feel pretty good.
You sound just like Mark in that respect. Of course, since you're contemplating children, I want to remind you to have your estate planning done. So right now you would have a simple will with you and your husband. I don't even know how that works with undocumented, but you should talk to a lawyer about that. And when you have children, it will become even more important. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Good luck. Keep on keeping on. Well done.
Thank you so much.
If you would like to come on the air with us, like Chloe, all you have to do is send an email, askjill@jillonmoney.com. And if you're on the website, jillonmoney.com website, there's a contact button. Click that contact button. Tell us what your question is. And then tell us, I want to come on the air. Mark will do the rest. Okay. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Jill on Money, where Jill Schlesinger takes the mystery out of your finances.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. This is the program that takes the mystery out of your financial life. Mark, I've gotten hooked on another crazy show on Amazon Prime. Let me just tell you what it is. It's called Baron Noir. It is a French sort of political thriller. Not a thriller. Maybe it's just a political drama. It's subtitled, which is great, except that sometimes I fall asleep, so I got to go back and figure out, that reading is that extra step. Baron Noir. It's on Amazon Prime. Kind of digging it. Yeah, it's shot in Paris, which means I'll get Mark to Check it out. Sucka is right. It really is. It's all the places you want to go where you're not going to be able to go for a while, even with everyone getting vaccinated and millions of people. So, okay, listen, last segment, I mentioned a little bit about the stimulus. Just to put a fine point on it, the stimulus that was just passed, that has a provision in it that allows you to not pay tax on unemployment benefits that you received $10,200 worth, I think it is. It may be income tested out. Basically, obviously, if you're collecting unemployment, it is unlikely you'll do that, but it's fascinating to me. So that's the that is the big break in it, that you can waive. There's a waiver of federal income tax on the first $10,200 of unemployment compensation if you received it last year. That's for a household making $150,000 or less. So keep that in mind if you got unemployment last year. All right. Okay, good. Now, let us get to a question. Tanya, who kind of wigged on us. She was going to come on the show, then she chickened out. But okay, we're going to still answer your question because you sent us a lot of info. Here's the background. Tanya says, I recently found your podcast and I love it. I've been a passive investor, but I'm taking an active interest in our retirement accounts. That's how I found the podcast and why I'm writing to you today. So Tanya's 48 years old. She's married. She's got 2 kids who are teenagers. They make about $280,000. They've got stable jobs. They could live on one salary, but they wouldn't be able to save as much. Here's what they got. 4 years left on a 15-year, 3.75% mortgage balance of 95 grand. House is worth 650. Traditional 401k, 380. Traditional IRA, 200. A Roth with 180. Cash of 60. 529 accounts got about 100 grand. Husband will have pension. Oh my God. And that pension will have a $600,000 value if he works until he's 65. She says all the money's in traditional 401ks. Our employers do have a Roth option. They'd chosen 401k as a way to lower a tax bill. We are in a high tax bracket, but I guess it will be high in the future. Should we use Roth 401ks? Mark, would you like to give me the Ed Slott line about the Roth 401k option? Just Roth it, baby. That's what Ed says. Which is not to say that, it's a tax deduction is not great. But I mean, you said that you guys are in a high tax bracket. You make, what did you say, 280 together? Is that right? So, I mean, you're in a high tax bracket. I don't know where you live, but, you're in the probably 24 to 32% tax bracket, depending on other stuff going on. I say Roth. You already have a lot of money. Like as far as I'm concerned, just knowing that you have the tax paid on a bunch of your money for retirement is really worth doing. So I say Roth. They max out their 401ks. They've got a company match. So they save 45 grand for retirement every year. That's all we're doing. Should we do more, like add to our traditional IRA? She's basically saying we've got money that's sitting in a very low interest account. I think that if you have 6 months of living expenses taken care of, whatever's over that amount, what you could do is, as you save more money, why not? You can pay off the mortgage. The mortgage isn't doing anything for you anymore. It's done, right? Because you got 4 years left. So there's not even any deduction that you're going to claim. So go ahead and pay that off. Not with a one fell swoop, but you can make a couple extra payments. Make sure you've got 6 months of your living expenses that are in the bank. She says all the money is in target retirement funds. She says, I think it's bad. We have 20 different options for investment. Should we exchange the 100% allocation to 4 to 5 funds with low expense ratios? I think that's a no-brainer. So, a stock index, a bond index, maybe a real estate fund, maybe a small company index, maybe an international index, and maybe even a commodities fund. That's it. Don't go crazy. Do take a risk tolerance test. Do try to figure out the right asset allocation for you. She followed up with us and said that they're going to get restricted stock units that vest, making their incomes closer to over $325,000. Yeah, but big deal. Like 325,000, you're still in the 24% tax bracket. Yes, I would do a Roth still. She wants to know whether I recommend selling RSUs. You betcha I do. I got a couple of calls from my CBS friends who are all like, oh, well, now that the stock market, I don't know if you saw CBS stock, went above 80. Oh my God. So I got a few calls on that this week. Yes, absolutely. You got to sell it. You've got to absolutely positively do that and take the money off the table and be diligent. That's truly, to me at least, I think that there is nothing better than being disciplined about that. And I know a lot of people who work at these big Wall Street firms, and these firms also are, it looks like they're printing money these days. But what they're doing is they're being smart. I mean, from people in the C-suite down. You know why? Because all the people in the financial services industry lived through 2008, 2009, where they got so freaked out. They saw all their money vanish and they've clawed that back. And now they've found religion, which is when you have stock that's available to sell, you sell it. You don't wait around for something bad to happen. And you're going to keep getting these stock units. So do it. Thank you very much for writing. I'm sorry you didn't join us. But yeah, Roth IRA, reallocate, and sell your RSUs. Hope that helps. Thanks for writing. If you have a financial question, send us an email. Our email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com, and we will be right back.
401ks, IRAs, refinancing, she covers it all. Back to Jill on Money with Jill Schlesinger.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we are so happy you're joining us. This hour is presented by LifeLock. LifeLock, let us help protect your identity. Hey, Mark, you know what I realize is that with bond prices going down and yields rising, a lot of people are going to start wondering, like, hey, how do I get more interest without the fluctuations? And they're going to start going and checking out, like, oh, there's higher CD rates. We want to remind you, we actually have zero connection to this company, except that we plug them all the time. And that is, if you are looking at renewing a CD or looking for a place to park some money, check out depositaccounts.com. Depositaccounts.com. Now, sometimes Capital One ends up on their lists, but they aggregate all the highest yielding accounts out there. Everything from a savings account, they have high yield checking and money market accounts, and also CDs. So check that out. Okay, there's your public service for the day. All right, now, here's a guy who said he wanted to come on the air with us, but then I don't know what happened. Must have been, I think it must have been like a technical issue. Anyway, his name is Mike. He is from the Midwest, and we are very happy to answer his question, even though he didn't want to come on the air with us. If you've got a question, ask Jill at jillonmoney.com, and we'll answer your question faster if you say, I want to come on the air with you. Okay, Mike says that he heard us on another podcast, and he says he's been listening to our podcast ever since. And he also just started my book. Remember my book? It seems like 100 years ago, The Dumb Things Smart People Do with Their Money. And he says, I love that the podcast is focused on helping people answer financial questions, or at least get them pointed in the right direction. So Mike says, as I pass age 40, I started to look ahead toward retirement. I wanted to check on how I'm doing towards reaching that goal. But honestly, I don't know what the goal is. That happens a lot. I recently started playing with some retirement calculators, but the numbers seem so huge, $3 or $5 million targets, that they're stated in terms of monthly spending. It doesn't seem relatable. How can I predict what my future expenses will be in retirement when it's 20 years out? Okay. So that's an interesting question, but maybe the best way to do it is to really look at where you are today, what you spend today, and just use that as a baseline. If you said, I spent $100,000, or let's say I make $100,000 today, I off the top put $19,500 into a retirement account. So I won't be doing that, obviously. But maybe you say like 80 grand a year is the number I want to use, 75 grand a year as my target. Social Security will be part of that, and then you've got to save the rest. So that's what I think you should be thinking about, okay? He says he turned 41, his wife is 39, no kids, furry ones instead, and he wants to target retirement for 60 to 62 for himself, 58 to 60 for the wife. They want to be traveling and highly active, blah, blah, blah. So he makes $105,000. He contributes 13% to a 401k, gets a 5% match. And he says spouse makes $65,000, contributes 6% to a 403b with a 4% match. So they'd make about 170 grand total income, 20 grand into retirement, including the match. They've got $380,000 in retirement, 30 grand is in a Roth. They also have $150,000 in a brokerage account. Mortgage is 190 grand, 3.875%, 20 years, couple cars. Next steps, change investments in the brokerage account for more growth. That's not a great idea. I wouldn't do that. I mean, certainly not with he says he's had capital preservation funds with American funds and it hasn't grown. Well, capital preservation means a pretty wimpy outlook. So, first thing I would do is decide whether you're going to stick with American funds. It sounds like you may have a broker involved. And if you're going to keep using American funds, which is fine since you've already paid a fee to do that, you got to decide really what this account is for. Is this your emergency reserve fund? He's got some car loans. So with that 150 grand, Mike, whatever's in that brokerage account, do me a favor, pay off the loans. That's easy. Piece of cake. And he says then after he does that, he's going to fully fund Roth IRAs. He's going to keep his contribution levels. You have an emergency reserve fund. You really do. It's already in that brokerage account. So that's the most important thing. I don't think you should retire early if you can't figure this out. He says, wants to know sort of the balance between retirement accounts and the investment accounts. So the first thing I would do is this. I would say, do you have a Roth 401k option? Does your spouse have a Roth 403b option? That's what I would be interested in. I think you should both be using the Roth option. 170 grand in income. That means you're in the 22% tax bracket. I would use all Roth all the time. And so what I would really be looking at is instead of you kind of putting money in that brokerage account, I'd rather you use Roth. That's really going to, I think personally, that you are going to be in better shape. And I think you should both be doing $19,500 each into those accounts. And you've got plenty of money in your brokerage account. Sell some of that off, pay off the loans, be sure to have an emergency reserve fund that's in cash, pay your tax that's due on that money. I'm not so sure. I mean, look, you can get more aggressive in the investment account, but if you do, just know that don't put any money at risk that you think you're going to need either for the emergency fund or for some other goal that you are planning on. Okay? I wish you'd come on the show because I really would love to know a lot more about you. But I got what I got, Mark. I've got to just deal with these people who are a little scared. Don't be scared. Come on with us. Send us an email. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. We'll be right back. You're back. It's Jill on Money. We're coming to the end of the first hour, but we like to squeeze in an extra question. If you have a financial question, all you need to do is send us an email, ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. Okay, Lisa says she and her husband are both almost 61. They plan to retire at 65. They've got retirement accounts at Vanguard, some managed, some self-managed, and almost half through my husband's 401k. The balance, about $1 million. Vanguard has recommended that we balance the 401k as we currently have 88% in stocks, 12% in bonds. They are recommending a 70-30 split, 70 stock, 30 bond. I agree with selling some of the stock funds. However, I'm hesitant to invest in bond funds. I keep thinking about the inverse relationship of interest rates to bonds, and I think that rates are going to rise, so that means bond prices will fall. Help, should I just sell some of the stock funds and put it into a money market? Well, yes, that's a good place to start. But I think it would be worth it for you to go back and listen to some of our bond episodes on the pod. Who was the bond guy? Man, I forget that guy's name. We had a bond guy and a bond. We had Justin Lin, but then we had the woman also, Kathy something. I can't remember her name. But anyway, the reason why bonds are good is that if you keep them short to intermediate term, you're not going to see as much fluctuation, but there's predictable income. That's why we like bonds. And that's why I think wisely someone at Fidelity is giving you the advice to add that as an asset class. I'm not saying that you should have 100% in bonds, but if you're really freaked out about bonds, sure, you can put the money in cash in the money market, but I would really caution you, because one of the beautiful things about owning like an institutional bond fund and index fund is that as interest comes in, you're reinvesting if the price of the bonds goes down. So you do get some benefit from that over the long term. Anyway, don't hate on bonds. Bonds can be a really good part of a portfolio. Okay. All right, you are listening to Jill on Money. When we return, we've got a great guest. We're talking more about some taxes. So we've got an expert. We have an expert from H&R Block, and she is coming up next. It's Jill on Money. We'll be right back.
It's the weekend, and that can only mean one thing. You're listening to Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
You're back. It is hour number 2 of the Jill on Money show, and we are so happy that you are joining us today. Yay! Okay. Tax season's going to be a bear. I'm just telling you right now. We've done a bunch of tax segments. I've done some on TV. I've done a bunch of episodes here on our podcast, but we're still getting tons of questions. So we had a fantastic idea. We said, let's get one of the great experts out there in the universe. And one of those experts is Kathy Pickering. She is the Chief Tax Officer at H&R Block. So that's a pretty big deal, right? I mean, you don't get much tippy top than that. And so we wanted to bring her in to talk a little bit about what's going on for the tax filing season, what to expect, some of the things that you need to keep in mind if you didn't get what you thought was a stimulus payment you deserved. And also, which I love, in this interview, we are able to ask her what I think is a fun question, which is, what is our biggest misconception about the Internal Revenue Service? So we are very excited to have Kathy Pickering join us. Oh, and this was recorded before the stimulus passed. So here's our interview with Kathy Pickering. You are the Chief Tax Officer at H&R Block. That's like a big time title. So what do you do all day long? What does that mean?
Well, as the Chief Tax Officer for H&R Block, I lead a team of experts on taxes. So it's a group of tax attorneys, CPAs, enrolled agents, and we have 3 key functions. One, we're watching all of the legislation and regulations and helping the company implement that. So that's helping to advise on the training for our tax preparers, providing the tax requirements to our software product developers, also providing support to our frontline tax preparers as they're writing tax returns, and they'll get into a specific question about, hey, what does this mean? I don't know how to apply it in this particular set of circumstances. We'll do the research and provide them with the guidance of, hey, here's how to apply the rules in this situation. The second thing is we manage the relationships with the IRS and the state departments of revenues. We talk with them regularly. How is e-filing going? Is everything working smoothly? And then the other thing we do is just watch the trends so that we can provide the thought leadership on what we're seeing, how things are changing through the season, the kinds of questions people have. So for a tax nerd, it's a really fun job.
Okay, here's my question. How did you first learn that you were a tax nerd?
That's a great question. I don't know that too many people are born into this. I actually started in a very different role with H&R Block. I was in their IT department. So I kind of worked my way through operations and e-filing. I held different roles in different parts of the business units, and then they gave me this opportunity. And when you work for H&R Block, you want to be a tax nerd. This is like the best place in the company to be.
Are you yourself a CPA?
I'm an enrolled agent.
And what's the difference between those two?
So an enrolled agent is someone who has gone through specific training and examinations, both on tax competency for individual and business, and then ability to represent clients before the IRS. It's a special designation that's given by the IRS.
Okay, so let's talk about this tax season, because I'm sure that you and all of the folks at H&R Block, as well as me and Mark, we have all been inundated with lots of questions because last year was such a crazy year. I just want to be clear, and I would love for you to just frame this, that stimulus payments, if you got the $1,200 or a few $100 for your kids, those stimulus payments, they are not taxable income. However, there's a lot of people who say, I don't think I got the right amount, or I had a baby born in the year, or the IRS screwed it up. What do those folks need to know about this tax filing season? Because already those payments were last year.
Jill, that is the question of the season. Everybody's really trying to understand the recovery rebate credit and how does it work and what does it mean on your tax return. So first things first, there was the first stimulus payment that was made in the springtime. The second stimulus payment was made at the end of December. And those were technically advance payments of the recovery rebate credit that is claimed on the tax returns that people are filing right now. So if you didn't get everything that you thought you were entitled to, either for the first or the second stimulus, now is the time to reconcile that and get whatever else you might be owed. The key reasons that people didn't get the full amount of their stimulus payments, there's really three categories. The first, which you mentioned, is your life changed. You had a baby, maybe you adopted a child, maybe you fostered a child. There's no way the IRS would have known about that until now. So that's a perfect reason to reconcile that on your tax return. Additionally, you were not able to claim the stimulus if you were claimed as a dependent on your parents' return. So if in 2020 you became independent and you're no longer eligible to be claimed on your parents' return, as example, you would now be filing for the first time yourself. You'd be able to claim the recovery rebate credit. And that can be a lot of money, right? $1,200 for the first, $600 for the second. So that can be $1,800 for somebody. The second category is if your income significantly changed, because the IRS was calculating the payment amounts based on your 2019 tax return, or in some cases, even your 2018 tax return if they hadn't processed your 2019 return yet. And a lot of people had big income changes, due to unemployment and circumstances. And so if you had a significant income change, you may be eligible for more money. And then the third category is something happened and you just straight up didn't get the payment. Maybe you moved, maybe your bank account was closed and it bounced back and those kinds of things. And so for that reason, if you didn't get the payment, you would claim it as well. Now, to your other question, those stimulus payments are not taxable. So that is very, very confusing for people. You're not going to be paying taxes on the stimulus payment money that you got. And we've seen a lot of questions in certain states because sometimes at the state return level, it asks you to add the money back in, but that's for other reasons. It's not for taxing that money. It's just to get your baseline incomes established properly.
We'll get back to our interview with Kathy Pickering in just a minute. If you have a financial question, a tax question, an investment question, an education question, don't forget, send us an email. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. We'll be right back.
Follow Jill on Twitter and Instagram for more personal finance content. Just use the handle at @JillOnMoney. Now, back to the show.
You're back. It is Jill on Money, and it is March, which means we are in heavy-duty tax season. It is also this month, the kind of month that makes you perhaps take stock of everything going on in your financial life. And why am I talking about that? Because, in tax season, when I was an investment advisor a million years ago, we used to say tax season was a great time to talk to people about their financial planning because it was the time where you had all those documents out, where you could really see, did I make certain trades in my account that were taxable? What is my position? Do I need help in something bigger? I don't know, just you're in the mindset. And that mindset is perfect because that mindset might encourage you to start taking control of your financial life in a different way. And maybe you can do it yourself. There's a lot of people who can do it themselves. You guys are listening. Many of you are total do-it-yourselfers. That's awesome. There's also a lot of people who are listening, and they are people who need some guidance. And it may be that you're super smart, but you don't have the time. It may be that you have the time, but you don't want to, or you don't have the expertise. What do? Well, you've heard us talk about, going into a robo-advisor. That's certainly an opportunity for people. But if you want a dedicated certified financial planner, I'd say the biggest complaint that I hear from you guys is when you go and start looking around, whether it's on the CFP website or through NAPFA, the National Association of Personal Financial Advisors, what you find is that it's expensive. And it can be. Listen, if you want customized financial advice for you and your family, that can be very expensive. Well, that is one reason that I am so happy that we have a sponsor this year on this show, because this sponsor is called Facet Wealth, facetwealth.com. Now, I got to know some of the folks at Facet because I was intrigued that they were somehow figuring out how to build a business on giving advice, but not charging an arm and a leg for that advice. So what's kind of cool is, unlike most of their competitors out there in the universe, Facet does not have any wealth or account minimums. A lot of people say to me, oh, well, if you don't have $1 million, they're not going to talk to you. Well, Facet will talk to you because Facet will meet you where you are. So what's kind of cool about that is that maybe you don't have $1 million yet, but maybe you're on track to have $1 million. Maybe you need help with developing your goals. Maybe you want to make sure that you get the same advisor you're talking to every time, that you don't want someone in a call center, even if that person is a CFP, you want the same person over time. You want to build a relationship. And you want to have a relationship that is based on those goals that you've established, not goals that the company has for sales. right? So you want to have conflict-free planning. You want to make sure that there is a fiduciary advisor on the other end. Anyway, that's what Facet Wealth has. They have CFPs who put your best interest first. That's what a fiduciary is all about. So that's why I'm encouraging you to check out facetwealth.com. Check it out. And we're going to have one of the CFPs from Facet Wealth, Brent Weiss. He's going to come back on the program. He's going to tell us how he's doing on his 1% better pledge, that 1% pledge. I love that idea. Just do something 1% better. And we'll check in with him on that. All right. Now, here we are. It is tax season, and we are very fortunate to have a tax expert with us, Kathy Pickering. She is the Chief Tax Officer at H&R Block. And you might be surprised, but there are a lot of people who don't actually have to file taxes. Some of them may want to this tax season, and you're going to hear why. Here's more of our interview with Kathy Pickering. I got a couple questions towards the end of last year about the stimulus and the qualifications. And I think there was also a question about, well, if I did not get a stimulus check, but I usually don't even file a return, do I now have to file a return to claim the recovery rebate credit, even though I never filed the year prior?
The answer to that is yes, absolutely. And this has been confusing for people. So for the first round of stimulus, the IRS had a portal where if you didn't normally file a tax return, you don't have a filing obligation, you could go in and in effect just put in some very basic, simple information. And then, that was technically filing a tax return, but it wasn't requiring a lot of information. And that was able to get you then into the IRS's systems so that they could calculate your stimulus payment. That said, now we're into the filing season and those first and second payments were already made. So if you didn't get those, you do need to file a tax return in order to claim that recovery rebate credit. So yes, you do need to file a tax return. There's many ways to do that. You can file online. There's free options. And if you aren't comfortable going into an office to get help, there's a lot of virtual ways that you can work with somebody to get help online. And of course, you can go in person to get help to get that prepared. And honestly, Jill, we're seeing a lot of people in that situation. And now they're going back and filing a couple years returns just to make sure that they're getting every advantage that they're eligible for, because sometimes they find out, oh, they're eligible for different credits they might not have even known about.
Exactly. Again, just to underscore that, Free File, the IRS program, it's available to anyone who makes less than 72 grand. So in fact, if you didn't file because maybe you didn't make enough money, don't freak out. Don't freak out. There are resources. So we talked about how there have been questions around the stimulus and the recovery rebate credit. Great. Unemployment, though, I cannot believe how many people are incensed that their unemployment benefits are taxed. And I try to be very calm. I'm like, look, here's the deal. I know it seems unfair, but it is income. And the IRS has always treated unemployment as income. And, maybe you're lucky enough to live in one of those 15 states where they don't tax on the state level, those unemployment benefits, but the government is going to tax those benefits. For a lot of people, this should not be a huge problem. Is that right?
This is exactly right, especially for people who are receiving unemployment for the very first time. They may just not understand that your unemployment income is taxable. And when you sign up for it, a lot of times they give you the option. Do you want to have taxes withheld? Some people are concerned that they need as much money in their weekly checks as possible, so they opt out of that. That can be good, that can be bad. It really depends on the situation. Typically, when you opt in to have taxes withheld, they withhold about 10% for your income taxes. What we're seeing is that the majority of people that are filing tax returns with unemployment income are still getting refunds. We hear so many questions about, oh my gosh, I didn't know that I needed to withhold income tax. Now I'm afraid. Now I'm afraid to file my taxes for fear that I'm going to owe money. If I owe money, I don't know where I'm going to come up with it. And this is where we really want to encourage people. If you're in this situation, like you said, don't freak out. Get the help and the advice that you need, because you may not end up owing money. You're still very likely to be eligible for a refund, and you may find out that you're eligible for other tax credits that you didn't even know about. So this is really an important time. If you're scared or uncertain, you want to go and get some help.
We'll get back to finish up our interview with Kathy Pickering in just a minute. If you've got a financial question, something's coming up around your taxes, let us know. The email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. Or if you're on our website, if you're on the Jill on Money website, we've got a contact button. While you're on the website, don't forget to sign up for our free weekly newsletter. It comes out every Friday. Okay, we'll be right back.
Welcome back to Jill on Money, where Jill Schlesinger takes the mystery out of your finances.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. We are here trying to take the mystery out of your financial life, and we are talking taxes. Mark, what do you think is the most common question that we have fielded about taxes for this tax season so far? Is it a Roth conversion question? That's not really this tax season, but what's the most common question that we've fielded? Right. I mean, really, the most common question that we have gotten over the last year is, I haven't gotten my stimulus check. And why is that so important? Because, you've got to make sure that you pay attention to this. Some people have not gotten their stimulus checks, and that means they've got to actually complete a tax return and get this recovery rebate credit. You got to go get it, gang. You can't wait around. This is really important. Another thing that I want to point out is that we got a ton of questions about the home office deduction. Haha. And I say that with a haha because I know you want that home office deduction, but don't forget, if you are an employee, right? If you are someone who is a W-2 employee, you don't get to deduct anything you spent money on for the home office. You just don't. So if you bought yourself a new chair or a stand-up desk, no. That whole idea of an employee business expense deduction, it got wiped away in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. No go. Sorry. If you're self-employed, you'd still get your home office deduction. Okay. All right. We're going to talk more about why you need to be actually getting a big jump on your tax filing. We are finishing up our interview with Kathy Pickering. She is the Chief Tax Officer at H&R Block. And many people wait till the bitter end. Why you shouldn't? Why you should maybe consider filing sooner rather than later. Maybe when you're done listening to the show, just go do it. Let's finish up with our interview with Kathy Pickering. She's going to tell you why you should get going. Okay, question for you about refunds. What is the percentage of tax returns filed that get refunds generally? I remember it used to be like totally insane number, 80%. Am I making that up, or am I not remembering this correctly?
Jill, that is right in the ballpark. It's around 85% of tax returns get a refund. And there's a whole host of reasons for that. Some people really like to be on the safe side. I think that's just human nature. People don't like hearing from the IRS. And if you find out that you owe money, it can be a very scary thing. So a lot of people like to be very conservative in their withholdings to ensure that they always get a refund. The other thing is there are so many credits in the tax code, things like the earned income tax credit, the child tax credit, the advanced child tax credit, that many people are eligible for benefits that perhaps they didn't even know about, which then gets them a refund, which, sometimes is completely unexpected, but can be an absolute lifeline, especially in times like this when people are just in such financial distress.
What is the biggest misconception that we as taxpayers have about the IRS?
That is a great question. I think the biggest misconception is that the IRS is a cold, cruel, heartless institution. My experience in working with, the dedicated professionals that I've had the privilege and opportunity to work with is that they are very committed. They're very proud. They work really hard to do the very best that they can. They have to follow the rules. They have to implement the laws. And sometimes we don't like, what the rules say. Over my tenure of working with them, I've really been impressed by the dedication and the professionalism that they've all demonstrated.
I love their website. I think they have a great website. That's what I have to say about that. Before we let you go, you come from like a tech and process background. And I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind making the huge pitch for getting rid of paper returns altogether and why people hear about tax frauds and, scams and all that. But why is it better to file electronically than with paper?
So the fastest and most accurate way to get your taxes filed and to get your refund delivered quickly and accurately is electronically. To file your tax return electronically and request your refund via direct deposit will ensure the fastest delivery of your money. And what we see is that last year, when the IRS had to shut down so many of their campuses because of COVID, they really got backlogged in terms of paper processing. And we were hearing stories about trailers full of paper where they were just collecting the tax returns. And they're still now working through that backlog of 2019 returns. So, if there was never, an obvious reason before, now making sure that your tax return and your correspondence doesn't get lost in the mail and stacked up with all the other paper that they've got to process, this is the time and this is the reason to file electronically.
I mean, and I want to just reiterate that if you think that you're better protected physically, putting all your stuff in an envelope and shoving it into a postal service or even doing return requests, all that stuff, you're nuts. Electronic is the way to go. And if you don't know how, I can say this, you can't say you're nuts because you're a much nicer person than I am, but really, this is crazy. We're making ourselves nuts for no reason.
One other point that I would make on that is from a security and an identity theft protection perspective, filing electronically protects your Social Security, because once you have filed with your own Social Security number, no other identity thief can file against it. So this is actually counterintuitive, but filing electronically provides you more protection against identity theft than any other method.
Well, thanks so much to Kathy Pickering from H&R Block. We really appreciate it. If you've got questions about your taxes, you can go check out H&R Block, by the way. They've got a lot of different things that you can do there, but you can also just send us an email. Very easy. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. That's Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. And if you're on our website, if you're on the JillOnMoney.com website, maybe you should subscribe to our sister broadcast. It's called Jill on Money. It's a podcast. Okay, we'll be right back.
.401ks, IRAs, refinancing, she covers it all. Back to Jill on Money with Jill Schlesinger.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. If you have a financial question, a tax question, or retirement question, or maybe you're just getting started, you want to know what you need to do to think about getting your first foot into the world of controlling your own financial life, give us a holler. Our email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. askjill@jillonmoney.com. And you know what's cool? You can send us an email. We're happy to take your email. However, what's really cool is if you want to come on the broadcast with us, if you would like to join us here at the Capital One Bank virtual studios, Capital One, this is Banking Reimagined. What's in your wallet? That studio. If you want to join us, Mark will get you on the air with us. So when you send that question, say, I want to come on the air with you. And Mark will do the rest because he is brilliant. And that's what he does. He just makes magic happen all the time. So do let us know. We'd love to have you join us. Okay. Now, who is this from? Andrea says, I listen to your podcast while I'm out in the yard digging and pulling weeds. Okay. Here's a question. Andrea writes, we are invested with a boutique financial advisor, and we would like to move everything to Vanguard, but we're stuck in illiquid assets. My questions are, is our situation that bad? Is there a way to have our investments peer reviewed? If so, is there a better exit strategy than what we have so far? And is now really a good time to invest in a target retirement account with cash, given that the market has nowhere to go but down? Let's find out more about Andrea. She's 56. Her husband's 52. Husband makes $150,000 a year, works for the state, and he hopes to retire in 12 years. So when he's 64. Okay. He actually joined the state just a few years ago after being a consultant. She is a stay-at-home mom and yoga teacher. That's how you make the big bucks. I think she means facetiously. The son is 18, ready for college, COVID or not. I'm currently studying to get a real estate license. Maybe I'll make a contribution to the household after all. Okay. As it is with pension and Social Security, we estimate our monthly income in retirement to be equal to what it is now. That's great. And she says, unless she becomes a real estate tycoon in the meantime. 7 years ago, we were introduced to a financial advisor recommended by a fellow yogi. We were looking to invest proceeds from the sale of our first home at that time. So that was $150,000. He was charming, enthusiastic. The investments he selected for us seemed just fine. That's his job after all. And we've had our investments chugging along. When my husband made the change from consulting to the state, we transferred his IRA with $500,000 from T. Rowe Price to this advisor. It was never really clear. I'm worried about this right now. It was never clear how well our portfolio was doing. We didn't think about it since we liked and trusted the advisor. But sometime before COVID hit, I made a spreadsheet and it allowed me to see the real picture. How much did we invest? How much do we have now? And it became clear that over the last 6 years, we made about 1% on our investments. So we decided time to break up with this fellow. Not so easy. All the investments, now we understand, are considered alternative investments, mostly REITs. We have managed to extract some money. Everything remaining is not liquid, and some has plummeted in value. Others appear to be doing fine. Neither of our credit unions will hold these investments. Vanguard won't take them. Schwab would charge extra fees to handle them. So we feel stuck with our guy until these investments become liquid. Meanwhile, with his geeky enthusiasm and slick presentation, our advisor is suggesting that we add the liquid $100,000 that we have into a new fund. He thinks it's going to do really well. So as much as we want to run, not walk away from this guy, my husband and I have wondered if there's a way to have this guy and his funds peer reviewed. I looked on the FINRA website, found that he had one dispute in 2014. It seems reasonable. We're most interested in his funds, which are limited to his customers only. I've never heard specific investments discussed on your podcast. I'm not including its name. Thank you for looking at this. It's a bad story, Mark. So in the bank and in Vanguard, they got $215,000. With the advisor, they've got $650,000. The IRA money, that whatever has already, just so you're clear, whatever you have in liquid assets, get out of this fund immediately and open up an IRA at Vanguard and move that money in right now. Okay. So the $100,000 that's liquidated and awaiting instruction, the instruction is get that to Vanguard ASAP. I'm interested in the money that is the funds that he has, the 250. I think you need to have, okay, this is what I think. You know what? I think you should get a second opinion about this and figure out the best way to get out. I'm thinking that there's some of this money, Mark, they can pay a 2% penalty to get out. Maybe they should. Maybe they should. Maybe they should pay the 2% penalty and get the heck out of there and move on. The other non-liquid investments I don't know about. I think that I would want to know exactly when these investments become liquid, and then I would start to get a strategy. But I think you may want to go to NAPFA, National Association of Personal Financial Advisors, and get yourself when you say peer reviewed, you can get an advisor who will look this over and give you a game plan to get you the heck out. You can't stick. This guy's not good. This is not good. This is the danger of illiquid investments or alternatives. You've learned a painful lesson. You have a lot of money. You'll make plenty of money in the next 10, 12 years. And let's get you with an advisor who can really help you out. So that's my advice. Mark, this is a terrible question. I mean, a terrible situation. It's a good question, but let's help her out. All right. It's Jill on Money. When we return, we're going to answer maybe one more, maybe two more questions. We'll see what you got. Okay. The email address, askjill@jillonmoney.com. We'll be right back. You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we are here to try to take the mystery out of your financial life. If you just heard that previous question that we got, it was about illiquid investments, alternative investments. All these things sound great when someone's selling them to you. If you are being sold or someone is presenting this to you, please give us a holler. Ask Jill@jillonmoney.com. That is our email address, and we like to help you before you get involved in one of these crazies. Okay. John writes, I always like to read these, especially at the end of the show. The subject line, thank you. Thank you for the interesting article in the Chicago Tribune today. In that, I was talking about an interview that we are going to air on this program with Cal Newport. His new book is called A World Without Email. Anyway, John goes on to write, I've long been interested in time management. I've been retired for 6 years. I still lay out my list of to-dos and prioritize my day with my Franklin planner. That is old school, Mark. You probably don't even know what that is. My goal each day is to be productive and fulfilled, and staying focused is the only way I can accomplish that. Best regards, John. When are we going to have Cal on the radio show? Okay, so within the next month or so, Mark says, we're going to air this interview that we conducted with Cal Newport. You're going to love it. But in the meantime, go to our website, jillonmoney.com, and you can read the article that John is referencing because it was fun. It was a fun interview, and I was very glad to have Cal on the program with us again. All right, that's it. That's the program. Thank you so much for listening. A couple of business items. If you are looking at a financial advisory relationship, check out facetwealth.com. They are the sponsor of this show. If you want information about us, go to our website, jillonmoney.com. You can sign up for our free weekly newsletter. You can subscribe to the sister broadcast, which is a podcast. Okay, so we are very happy that Joel Goodman composed our music. Mark Talercio is the best executive producer in the universe. And we want to remind you that even though cases are coming down, hospitalizations are coming down, you still have to wash your hands. You still have to wear your masks. Even if you got inoculated, don't forget, you got to do that if you're with people who haven't been. Maintain your physical distancing and try to do something nice for somebody today. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.